I've been reading this book, How to Stay in Love by James Sexton, who is a divorce lawyer and has been working as a divorce lawyer for decades. You can find him on YouTube. There are fascinating interviews that he gives. But I am talking about his book today, and I read this more chapters of it when I woke up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. Couldn't fall asleep, grabbed my Kindle, and there are a lot of insightful things that I wanted to share with you. Some of them, I'm just going to read the highlights. Some of them, I am going to read the whole story because the whole story is so fascinating and what we can learn from it, he tells us at the end of the story. So let's go through it. This is going to be a long one. The continuation of a previous video I did about hit send now, that technique of radical honesty. This is video number 2 of this book. So let's get to it. This is chapter 4, You Can Be Right or You Can Be Happy. Two of the most troubling expressions heard in the divorce trade are soulmate and 50-50. If the concept of soulmates didn't exist, I'm certain we'd have far fewer divorces and unhappy relationships. And then he doesn't go into detail about why soulmates are so damaging to relationships. So I asked DeepSeek a question about this. Why is it so damaging? And it gave a really good outline. So I'll just read you one of the bullet points. It creates unrealistic expectations. The idea that there is one perfect person out there who will fulfill all your needs and desires creates this unrealistic expectation, which leads to dissatisfaction when your partner inevitably falls short of these expectations. And if anything gets hard, you think, well, maybe this is not the right person, because if it was the right person, then everything would be easy. And so there's no room for growth when you believe in soulmates. That's one of the reasons. And there are a whole bunch of other points, but you get the gist. So let's move on. Don't believe in soulmates because that's damaging. That's lesson number 1 from chapter 4. Okay. Here's a highlighted text that I'm going to read out. The next time your partner says, "I'm sorry I did blank," fill in really stupid thing, and it was genuinely a stupid thing your partner did, like not listening to you or not giving credit to your perspective, instead of pointing out how very stupid it was, why not respond with, "I'm sorry too," which in my experience 9 times out of 10 will completely disarm your partner. "Wait, you're sorry?" they might say. "Yes, I'm sorry for the way I handled it," you'll say. "I'm sorry for the way I didn't see you were in a bad place. I'm sorry that I didn't realize what you needed from me in that moment and let the conversation go down the road that it did." What you do with that kind of reaction and what your partner should ideally do back, it creates balance of fault, balance of virtue, balance of investment to the relationship. I doubt I need to point out that balance is one of the key components of a healthy relationship. Yeah. And as mentioned above, I don't see much of it in my line of work. That's what he said. So even when your partner does something wrong and apologizes to you, apologizing back to create this balance of saying, "I'm sorry, I wasn't really paying attention to how you are feeling," or whatever it may be, just creating a balance. That was interesting to hear. So apologizing when you're not even at fault and the other person is at fault and apologizing. I haven't heard that before, but that totally makes sense. That sounds very hard to do because it feels like in that moment when your partner is apologizing to you, it feels like, yeah, you're right. You should apologize to me. You were totally in the wrong. But, well, hard to do, but very beneficial to do, I guess. So let's move on to chapter 5, expectation versus reality. Here's a statement. "I want to be more present in my marriage." What the hell does that mean? It's a conclusion. It's a destination, not a path to get there. How about something more tangible like, "I want to stop playing with my phone when my spouse is talking to me," or "I want to do more activities on the weekend with my spouse." These are 2 great examples, 2 great ways to be more present in your marriage, and they're tangible and measurable. Yeah, so he gives different examples of what goals you want to have in your relationship, and instead of just saying I want to feel closer to my spouse, maybe you will say something that's measurable, like I want to have mutually satisfying sex with my spouse at least twice per week, or I want to remember to compliment my spouse at least once per day, and ideally to have him compliment me. They're both behaviors that would likely result in feeling closer to your spouse. So be honest with yourself. And he says deeply and painfully honest. He said, admit to yourself what you're good at and what you're not good at. Admit to yourself how much time you have to devote to your goals and you're trying to achieve with your partner, and what you're doing with that time. So be honest about all aspects of the partnership that you enjoy and that you loathe. So let's move on to the next chapter, chapter 6. Okay, so this is where I'm going to read a story. Kind of funny. Charlotte, whose divorce was one of the very first I handled when I started my own practice, was angry. Paul was her husband, and more than 30 years, a highly regarded trial lawyer, a serious man, a man accustomed to being an expert and telling people what to do. He advised his wife that he wanted a divorce while he was sitting on the toilet. It was a typical Saturday morning, and they woke up early. She pruned a few things in the garden. She made the two of them scrambled egg whites and whole wheat toast for breakfast. They discussed their respective weekend tennis plans at the country club, in which permutation of foreign engineered vehicles it would make sense to take there. Then he called her into the bathroom where he was sitting on the toilet and told her that he had really been meaning to talk to her about the marriage, and that he was really not happy anymore and thought it would make sense to go our separate ways. He didn't even provide a courtesy flush. Paul, it turned out, had been sleeping with a considerably younger woman, a paralegal at the firm. Cliched middle-aged male behavior or not, it devastated Charlotte and caught her completely off guard. Small comfort that it was, she got her first measure of revenge by taking his precious antique tennis racket collection, dumping it in the empty swimming pool in their backyard, squirting lighter fluid on it, and making a bonfire. More than once during our conversations, I heard Charlotte lament, "He took my skinny years." As I learned of their life together, I heard about the out-of-town legal conferences, junkets he attended. He often invited Charlotte, but she always stayed back with the kids. I heard about how Paul kept getting away, occasionally adding golf trips with his buddies, but Charlotte never did the same with her friends, though Paul encouraged it. Even after both of their children were off at boarding school and then college. Charlotte, now in her 60s, had married in the late 1970s when the institution was radically changing, but she had led a very traditional life, and maybe it didn't have to be that traditional. Who knows what would have become of Charlotte's life had she put herself and not her narcissistic husband higher on her list of priorities. And not to blame the victim here, but I couldn't help but wonder what would have become of Charlotte's marriage had she been more adventurous, more open to doing things on her own, or doing more and different things with Paul so that she broadened her own horizons and theirs together. You don't have to come from an earlier era to fall into that trap. Okay, and he also talks about how men and women in their early 30s are doing the same thing. They're letting themselves be changed to an unhelpful degree by marriage and commitment. And then he talks about Jacqueline, a travel photographer who married Matt, a financial analyst. Well, they met in Barcelona, and they got married in Las Vegas less than a year later. They had 2 children really quickly, and within a year of birth of their second child, Jacqueline was increasingly unhappy, not only with the marriage, but the person it had, in her view, transformed her into. Before she and Matt moved in together, Jacqueline was a free spirit. She had a small apartment near Madison Square Park in Manhattan. She went to yoga a few times a week. She played dodgeball league during the summer months, kept in touch with her college friends, made a point of seeing as many movies at the Tribeca Film Festival each year as she could get tickets to. 6 months after I met Matt, she shared with me, my life was unrecognizable. Jacqueline had never really intended to change so much of herself. Jacqueline and Matt were splitting up in part because of Matt's financial irresponsibility, and in part because the marriage didn't do what they had hoped it would do. They hoped, as many marrying couples do, that marriage would help them find a deeper connection to each other and also to themselves. That they would, through intimacy, deepen their connection to both me and the we in the relationship. In fact, the opposite happened. The expectations they placed on themselves as a function of the marriage were antagonistic to their own sense of self and the habits and hobbies that helped them. So let's fast forward to the lesson here. You already know the messages at the core of this. Make time for yourself. Don't lose your identity in your marriage or in becoming a parent. I'm not here to regurgitate the obvious. You stay interesting to your partner by staying interested in things outside your life together. You stay interesting to yourself and therefore better equipped to stay interesting to your partner by stepping outside of the marriage from time to time to find satisfaction. Your spouse can be a lot of things for you without being everything. Why the hell did we start trying to have one person be everything? Who thought that was a good idea? Make girls' night out or boys' night out a very regular thing. There's always an excuse not to. Find a good excuse to not give yourself an excuse to miss it. You don't wake up one day like Jacqueline, unrecognizable, without taking countless tiny steps further and further away from who you were at the start. Don't be afraid to be selfish, even once you've become a parent, especially once you've become a parent. If you're never fully allowed to unplug from being married, you never fully recharge. If you don't step away from the we to reconnect with the me, you eventually find yourself far from the shore, sometimes too far to get home, and lose both. So, don't lose yourself in the relationship. Maintain your friends, meet up with your friends, maintain your hobbies, and do things by yourself sometimes without always, have your own life in addition to being in a relationship. Discouraging your spouse from having, say, a regular girls' night out or boys' night out is a profoundly dumb idea. In fact, not only is it dumb to discourage it, it is dumb not to actively encourage it. This is what someone who has facilitated the demise of more than 1,000 marriages has learned. If you think the only thing keeping your spouse with you is your refusal to allow him or her to see that there are any compelling alternatives in the world, here's some bad news. Your spouse sees what else is out there, and they don't have to leave the house. They don't have to leave the house for that. If you think the only thing keeping your spouse from sleeping with other people is restricting his or her access to other people they might want to sleep with, here's some more bad news. If your spouse wants to sleep with someone else, they will. At work, or while you're at work, or in the car, or outside a bar, or they'll do it in a broom closet of your children's school with the janitor. That's not a made-up example. I cross-examined the janitor. Encouraging your spouse to play a round of golf, or hit the gym, or get her nails done, or get that drink with his old college roommate, or go away for a weekend is almost always a winning relationship strategy. And he gives his reasons, but I don't need to tell you the reasons, right? At this point, we basically got the gist of it. Okay, chapter 7. This is one of the more interesting stories. Chapter 7, reading minds and accepting appearances. Elizabeth, early 40s, dark blonde hair, striking blue eyes, pearl earrings, expensive pale gray suit tailored to show off her soul cycle build, sat across the table from me in my conference room. Everything about her was crisp and efficient. Okay, I'll fast forward a bit. Basically, he talks about how cold and straight to the point and emotionless Elizabeth was throughout his entire interaction with her. This is how she got divorced. We were in the kitchen and Douglas said, "What would you like for breakfast?" And I said, "A divorce." So Douglas did not seem to understand. Then he said, "You're kidding." And I said, "No, I've prepared a spreadsheet of what I'm taking." Okay, so she actually showed a recording because she recorded it because she thought she might need that recording. And yes, that's how it happened. I listened to the recording, James Sexton says. Yes, that's exactly how it happened. The pause before his "you're kidding" was brutal. This guy was legitimately expecting to hear poached eggs and got a divorce instead. No wife, no eggs. Rough day. So she was super precise with her preparation. She was organized, no nonsense. She was a well-paid executive at an IT firm. She said to James Sexton, "Please don't waste your time in communications explaining to me how negotiations work. I'm an executive at a Fortune 500 company." This was him trying to communicate regularly as a regular client, but she was like, "No, you don't need to explain to me. I already know what's going on, so don't give me any explanations. I already know." So, okay, duly noted, he said. So, having learned my lesson, James Sexton says, I dispense with any attempts at the virtual handholding that many clients need at junctures during the divorce process. I briefly considered dispensing entirely with the pleasantries and normal human interactions, such as saying hello when I entered the room to meet with her. The judge actually referred to this as the breakfast case because it was played so many times that the divorce happened. What do you want for breakfast? A divorce. It played out 50 times, at least 50 times in the courtroom. And yeah. Okay, here's the meat of it. Here's the meat of the story. In the months or years leading up to that breakfast conversation, James Sexton asked her, "Did you tell him that?" I asked her, and she said, "No, not exactly, but he should have known." It was an ugly case that dragged on for a year and a half. Man, this is a long case. I didn't know divorce cases take that long. So let's fast forward. The trial took 3 days. We struck a deal after that, back and forth. Christina, who works for James Sexton, on the ride there somewhere, she told me, James Sexton, that Elizabeth was very upset with me. And he said, "Wait, what?" I asked Christina, "With me?" And first, I was shocked that Elizabeth was capable of displaying emotion, any emotion. Second, I was shocked that she was experiencing a human emotion strongly enough to express it to another human being. Christina said, "Yeah, she said she felt you were really cold to her throughout the process. She said you never asked her at any point how she was doing." James Sexton said, "I was dumbstruck. I considered the best and easiest and most natural part to me, the part of my job, the relating part, understanding where my clients are emotionally and psychologically, understanding where my clients are emotionally and psychologically and what they need right then. I can usually talk people off the ledge, calm them, and help them manage the tumult. Tumult. Yet I'd failed completely at it with Elizabeth. After noting her businesslike demeanor, this was a person, after all, who had prepared a spreadsheet of the division of marital assets even before asking for a divorce, someone who'd made an audio recording of the breakup conversation, and hearing that at work she constantly dealt with men treating her differently from male colleagues, the last thing I wanted was to give even the slightest appearance of patronizing her. She seemed okay, therefore she was okay. Disappointed in myself, I called Elizabeth, I got her voicemail, and left a message of apology. I never heard back. So this is the part that I highlighted. Elizabeth has misplaced belief that others could read her mind. I had the misplaced belief that appearances are truthful. Given what I do for a living, I should have known better. Elizabeth didn't appear to be miserable, and however much of a gasbag Douglas may have been, he was genuinely shocked that she was unhappy enough to ask for a divorce. How could he have known what was coming and maybe have done something to change the course? Well, Elizabeth could have told him, but she didn't. She was deeply unhappy, and so she assumed, no doubt with building, perhaps even blinding resentment, that he could just feel it coming through her pores, and if he couldn't, well, he should have known. The takeaway of the story is sadly not unique. I'd say a good 2/3 of divorces I handle, maybe more, are usually mutual disbelief or one-sided disbelief. People can't hear what you don't say. Those in love often have a weakness. They may believe they magically know each other's feelings and understand their mood changes. Of course they do. How could they not? They're in love. They're soulmates. No, you don't understand what's going on. Neither does your partner. Your partner can't hear what you don't say, and vice versa. If you care enough about your relationship and want to keep it, be sure you're checking in with your partner on a regular basis. No, you're not good at mind reading. No one is. There is no such thing. Man, so that was funny how he got completely blindsided by this cold, calculating, all business woman who actually wanted some human warmth and some genuine emotional support, which she communicated none of that. So he had no idea. He thought it would be patronizing to ask her because she seemed fine. So her whole divorce was so blindsiding because the husband had no clue because he never knew she was so miserable. And it's not communicated. So do a lot of check-ins. Do a lot of check-ins with your partner. He says he doesn't know how often you should do them, but you should be doing them often. You should be checking in with your partner, see how they feel about where they are in life and how they feel about the relationship. Oh man, that was tough reading all with the sore throat that I have, with the cold that I have, but I thought that was worth sharing. So the takeaways that I got from that are, have a life outside of your relationship and outside of parenting. You should be selfish to a point of, like, he also talks about an example where a father completely dropped all his hobbies for his wife and children and was just sitting at the couch with them every night or something like that. But after he got divorced, he started getting back into the stuff that he found joy in before his marriage, before children. He should have been doing that throughout his marriage and throughout parenting. That, and so also don't assume people can mind read, because people cannot mind read. They don't know what you're thinking about. They don't know what you're feeling unless you tell them. Yeah, I thought that was really important. And that's why communication is so key. And that's why you should have check-ins with your partner. So great to know. That was insightful. I will continue to share more if I feel like it's worth sharing in a future video. So be on the lookout for that. Here comes the pet montage. 1% better every day, baby.
You working out, Muffin? You working out? Oh!
Sweet potato. Kokuma. Kokuma.
Tig! Where are you going, Tig? Tig, you want food? You finished your food for the day. Hmm?